All right, we're going to continue our study of Isaiah, going through what is commonly referred to as the Book of Comfort. That's the chapters 40 through 55, I believe. And we are currently in chapter 46, continuing our study of chapter 46. Last week, of course, we talked about how every god, every false god, ends up becoming a burden. Every idol, what begins with something that we trust for security, for meaning in life, purpose, those things are a burden to us, become a burden to us. We're still going to be talking about that this evening. But picking up here in verses 3 through 4 in a moment, I think I need to advance the slide. If you have your handout from last weekend, last Wednesday, we're still looking at that. I think I had a few extra. Anybody? I have 2 more copies. Anybody? Okay, so we're still following along with the God who carries. That's the lesson we're on. Getting into God movement 2 on that handout. God bears his people. Let me just get the slideshow where it needs to be. So, of course, you've got the 5 movements here. Idols are a burden, which we talked about in verses 1 through 2 last Wednesday. Picking up here with God helps his people, or God bears his people. Verses 3 through 4. We'll go into how there is no comparison to him in verses 5 through 7. We'll go over his plea to remember and return in verses 8 through 11, and then finally salvation is spoken of as being near in verses 12 through 14. So Bel and Nebo, we talked extensively about who they were. I've got a review slide here I'm trying to get to. So in 46 and verses 1 and 2, what happens to the Babylonian gods Bel and Nebo? And I've got actually multiple choice this time. So was it they are enthroned in glory before the people, number A, or B, were they carried off on beasts of burden, unable to deliver themselves? C, did they deliver Babylon from the Persian Empire or Persian invasion? Or D, are they melted down and rebuilt as new idols? B. So that's correct. They are carried off on beasts of burden, unable to deliver themselves. It says there in verse 2, they could not deliver the burden, but themselves are gone into captivity. So question number 2, what's the big idea, the contrast that we drew from this chapter? Is it A, carried God cannot carry you? The only true God carries his people. Is it B, idols are more reliable than living gods because they are visible? C, Babylon's gods were destroyed before they could be carried away? Or is it D, God shares his throne with any idol that man creates? A, a carried God cannot carry you. And only the true God carries the people. The direction of carrying reveals the nature of the God. If you are burdened by that which you worship, that is not, I'm thinking Jeff Foxworthy, how he worded, you might be worshiping an idol, you might be worshiping a false god. But question number 3, which New Testament passage connects Isaiah 46 and Isaiah 53, verse 4, to the Messiah's work of bearing and carrying? Is it A, John 4:24? Is it B, Genesis 1:26? Is it C, Matthew 8:17 and 1 Peter 2:24? Or is it D, 1 Samuel 5:1-4? C, absolutely. In fact, there's only 3 New Testament passages in there, so that was getting there. But Matthew 8:17 and 1 Peter 2:24. The servant who bears sickness and sin is the same servant who bears and carries his people. So we'll see a more defined thread to Christ at the end of this lesson. Actually, you see there, under salvation is near, the trajectory that leads us to Christ there. We'll be summarizing that this evening. Any comments or questions so far? Everybody understand how that the things that we trust, if they're not God, if they're not his word, the things that we turn to for security and meaning and purpose, that those things are a burden to us? We listed a few of them last week. Where do we turn to feel secure? Like if I have this, I am, I feel like I am secure, like I'm financially secure. A job, right? We have people that put their all into their job and see their job as the number one thing, or at least act as though their career is the number one thing. We do, don't we? Is there any job on this earth that is actually secure? No. Some of you know the feeling of being laid off, probably due to no fault of your own. It's just the company's making budget cuts and you're on the chopping block. No matter how loyal or how long you've been with them, sometimes it's the those that have been there the longest that have gone up in the ranks. Well, they need to cut that salary, so you're gone. It doesn't matter. There's no loyalty there. Does it take a lot to keep a job? Yeah. Showing up early or showing up on time every day, that's something that's sometimes difficult to keep, right? There's a lot of aspects of it that are a burden to you to keep that, what you see as security. And it's really just a facade. It's the appearance of security. And then we could list several things that are a burden. If you are bearing it, you might have your priorities. So Isaiah, I wonder if I could have somebody read for us. Let's go ahead and read verses 1 and 2 again. Verses 1-4 of Isaiah 46, please.
Bel bows down, Nebo stoops. Their idols were on the beasts and on the cattle. Your carriages were heavily loaded, a burden to the weary beast. They stooped, they bowed down together. They could not deliver the burden, but have themselves gone into captivity. Listen to me, O house of Jacob, and all the remnant of the house of Israel, who have been upheld by me from birth, who have been carried from the womb. Even to your old age I am he, and even to gray hairs I will carry you. I have made, and I will bear, even I will carry, and will deliver you.
All right, thank you very much. Anybody remember by and large, what kind of literature Isaiah is? What style of literature? Poetry, right? And the Hebrew poetry is a bit different than the poetry we use in English, which is basically, if it rhymes, it's poetry, right? If the words rhyme, that's how you define poetry. Hebrew poetry is specifically thought rhyming, if you could. It's looking at the meaning and it's rhyming the meaning, if that makes sense to you, right? So here he is definitely waxing poetic, Hebrew poetic, here in verses 1 through 4, because God is turning from the spectacle of Babylon's collapsing gods, these gods that cannot hold themselves up. Remember we talked about Dagon last week as well. Kept falling over, fell over twice. The second time, busted into pieces, was decapitated, and lost his arms and everything. Just should have been apparent to the Philistines of what kind of God they were serving, which was no God at all, because they kept having to pick it up rather than them being born by their God. They were bearing it. And it's the same thing with the Babylonian gods of Bel and Nebo in chapter 46, verses 1 and 2. So he's turning from those collapsing gods, and this is going to be important for Israel to hear, because they're in captivity. He's speaking to them, future, in captivity. They're going to be around all these false gods in captivity, and they're going to know, based on Isaiah's words, what kind of gods those Babylonians are serving. And so the language here is poetic, because he's talking about who must be born, to who does the bearing. Who actually does the bearing? It is the idol maker that does the bearing with Bel and Nebo. It is God that does the bearing with Israel. And it's the same with us. The same is true with us today. Israel had been born by God. Isn't that poetic, the way he does that? How he turns to a God that must be carried to a God that carries. So we've got a couple of word studies here in verses 3 and 4. First of which is nasa, which is again the same verb used for the idol carried on a beast's back. In verse 1 there, it's the same word being used for God bearing his people through history here. And the contrast would have been apparent to the Hebrew, just as it is or should be in English to us. We have this second Hebrew expression, I guess, Anihu, I am he. He is declaring himself as that God. Look back at chapter 43, in verse 10. Chapter 43 and verse 10. Ye are my witnesses, saith the Lord, and my servant whom I have chosen, that ye may know and believe me, and understand that I am he. Before me there was no God formed, neither shall there be after me. And then in chapter 48, we'll see this used again. Chapter 48, verse 12. Hearken unto me, O Jacob and Israel, my call. I am he. I am the first. I also am the last. He is the one that does the bearing. He is not the one being born. He is doing the bearing. And you see the duration of that bearing as well. In verse 4, even to your old age. Let's start in verse 3, actually. Toward the end of verse 3, which are born by me from the belly, which are carried from the womb. That from the belly, from the womb, is used in the Old Testament many times, and it is what it sounds like. The place of origin. That he formed them. Remember, does the potter say to the clay, You have no hands? As we looked at in chapter 44? Chapter 40, yes, chapter 44. So God is the one that has formed them. He is their origin. They owe their existence to him. I am he says. So he's declaring himself as their origin, as their maker, as the one who bears him. So I want to look at something else here. Everything we know, and we come back to this constantly, everything points to who? Everything points to Christ, right? Matthew 8:17, someone, please. Matthew 8:17.
But Jesus, being aware of it, said to them, "Why do you reason because you have no bread?"
That it might be fulfilled which was spoken by Isaiah the prophet, saying, He himself took our infirmities and bore our sickness.
Thank you. That is a direct quote of what verse? And I'll review.
Verse 2.
Well, that's another one coming up. Yes, that's very good. But he's quoting Isaiah 53 and verse 4. It's a direct quote from Isaiah 53 and verse 4. He himself took our infirmities and bare our sicknesses. Now 1 Peter 2:24, please.
Who his own self bare our sins in his own body on the tree, that we, being dead to sin, should live as to righteousness, by whose stripes ye were healed.
Thank you very much. Who his own self bore our sins in his own body on the tree. Everything here is pointing to Christ. God is doing the bearing in Isaiah 46, and he's still doing the bearing in the New Testament. And everything finds its way, points to Christ here. One more thing, Isaiah 46 and verse 6. I'm sorry, Isaiah 46 and verse 4. Even to your old age, I am he. Even to 4 hairs, some of your versions say gray hairs. Gray hairs will I carry you. I have made and I will bear, even I will carry and I will deliver you. So from the womb, from your origin to the end, the entirety of your existence, I will carry, even I will carry. What does our Lord promise us? What does our Lord promise in Matthew 28:20? It says, I am with you always, even unto the end of the world. So the promise doesn't sound like it diminishes with time, does it? From the end to the beginning. And he who's bearing Israel, his covenant people, through exile, through Babylonian exile, into the Persian control, and he's also going to bear his church through history, and has borne our iniquities. Make sense to everybody? See the connection?
That's really comforting thought, though, to know that God is going to bear us and all of our burdens from the womb. And it's like, that's it. That's our time. That's all we have
Mhm.
to get right in our needs, so we can have a journey.
Absolutely. Another comforting thing, which I forgot to mention, is what can you do before the womb? Can you do anything for yourself before the womb? God is said to have started there. Before we could do anything for ourselves, He's already done. That ought to be comforting to us as well. Verses 5 through 7. I wonder if I could have somebody read verses 5 through 7.
To whom would you like to move and make it equals? And compare them, we made it alike. Those who lack gold from the purse and weigh out silver and scales, power goes, and He makes them into a god, and they fall down and worship. They lift it to their shoulders, they carry it, they set it in its place, and it stands there. It cannot move from its place. If one cries to it, it does not answer, or save him from his trouble.
All right, thank you very much. So God here is issuing a rhetorical challenge. It's rhetorical because what is the only answer? He says, to whom will you liken me? Who can you liken to God? Can you liken this image of Bel or Nebo to God? This image that you had that were just weighing down the cart as the beasts of burden had to carry it off? Could you liken God to them? Could you liken Him to anything today on this earth? Not want to prioritize Him, right? Not want to prioritize Him and His kingdom. But here is, to whom will you liken me? And that's the same challenge that we saw in Isaiah 40 and verse 18. 40 and verse 18, to whom then will you liken God? Or what likeness will you compare unto Him? There's one more here. 40, same chapter, verse 25. To whom then will you liken me? Or shall I be equal, saith the Holy One. So he's still contrasting himself from these idols. Idols cannot carry. They must be carried themselves. God carries. He carries us. Carried Israel. And idols cannot do anything else. Idols cannot deliver anyone. Idols cannot save. So here in verses 6 through 7, what we just read, was talking about how an idol is made, how it's formed, manufactured. And so you've got gold from a bag, silver is weighed, goldsmith hired, and then the god is made, and then the worshiper falls down before it. Then the idol is hoisted onto someone's shoulder. It's set down in one place, and it doesn't move from that place, or does it just sit there? It sits where you left it, right? It cannot move for itself. You have to move it. It doesn't speak. Cannot speak. It does not save. And so the idol, first of all, it's a product of earthly things. Human wealth, gold. These things that we think are so valuable, that's what this God is made out of. The things, the earthly things that men value is what He makes this God out of. It's human craft and it's human effort. So every element of its existence is derived by what man can do and what man wants to do. But it cannot do many things that man wants it to do. Verse 7 here lists, you have a slide for that. 4 things an idol cannot do. It cannot move from its place. It cannot answer when it's called. It cannot save out of trouble. And it must be carried to go anywhere. And that the word for trouble, by the way, there, Zara, put the slide in there, is the word for a tight place. It's a constriction. So, it's on the slide there. The God you manufacture shares the limits of its manufacturer. It stands where you set it and cannot move when you need it to. And that word Zara is a tight place. So when you need it, it's not there. It leaves you. Yes.
And not only like with what you were talking about with the representation physically, but the humans or people choose what it's done. I mean, you choosing like, well, he does this, and they can make it do whatever, make it be whatever they want it to be. Like, well, he will forgive you of this, or he will do this, or whatever they want.
Right.
If they're feeling bad about it, it can be whatever they
Absolutely.
want it to represent, and
Yes.
that makes sense anyway. Where God is, he's consistent,
Absolutely.
consistently the same.
Have you heard of the expression, the God-shaped hole? Right? You guys heard of that? The God-shaped hole. That means when you don't have God in your life, you've not prioritized Him, something you're going to try to put in that hole. You're going to try to fill that with something. There's recently an MMA fighter, a retired MMA fighter. I can't remember what his name is. I'm not big on MMA. What was that? Was that the one that was in the airport? That was had a confrontation with the cops? Was publicly drunken and yeah. Oh, no problem. But anyways, this man retired, and I saw an interview where he was talking about his behavior, or might have explained his behavior, where his whole life was the fight, was fighting in the ring. That's what he built his purpose on. He got up every day and exercised and did what he needed to. He worked hard to get where he got as an athlete. And then when that was no longer there, he lost it. He put something in the hole where God should have been. Well, really, it's not a hole. God needs to be all of us. God needs all of us. But that's just the expression they use, the God-shaped hole. When we try to fill it with other things, we're going to be disappointed. It's going to let us down. Anything in this life that we try to build our meaning around, that is not God, that is not His purpose, we're going to be disappointed. We're going to get let down eventually. It's is it the first or the second? It's the first one. All right. Any comments or questions?
Do we know the history of Baal and Nebo? Yeah, because they make these gods. They have the God in their head, but no one can see the God, so they have to make a God that matches up to whatever they. It's like the Greeks, they had all the gods that everybody knew. The god of water, they didn't have to have,
Right.
the God in front of them knowing that it was supposed to be the god of water.
Right. It was all in their imagination.
Yeah.
They just came up with it. Yeah, with Bel and Nebo, again, it was, before it was Bel, it was Marduk. Really, they kind of morphed into whatever the region they took over had before them. And even Cyrus, when he came in, I think there's some evidence that he kind of used Marduk and Bel and Nebo and all that and adopted it. It's like they absorbed the gods of the people before them, basically. So it's a strange history. But yeah, Bel was once Marduk, who they thought was the patron god of the city of Babylon for establishing cosmic order, and they credited Bel with their rise to power, which is kind of ironic because Isaiah credits their rise to power to somebody else, doesn't he? To God. And they were there because God wanted them there. He used them. Nebo, they were the instrument of God, and they didn't even credit God with it. Nebo is the son of Marduk, the son of Bel, and he is the God of writing and wisdom. So just their imaginations and having morphed previous gods into theirs, that's how I understand them to do that. That's gonna give somebody a seizure if they stare. So the verses 8 through 11, I wonder if somebody could read that, 8 through 11.
Remember this and show yourselves men. Recall to mind, O you transgressors. Remember the former things of old, for I am God, and there is no other. I am God, and there is none like me. Declaring the end from the beginning, and from the ancient times things that are not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand, and I will do all my pleasure. Calling a bird of prey from the east, the man who executes my counsel from a far country. Indeed, I have spoken it, I will also bring it to pass. I have purposed it, I will also do it.
All right, thank you. So here again, God through Isaiah is pivoting from this argument to summoning them, to telling them, remember and return. I think there's a lot of lessons in remember. And one of those things is what happens when we don't remember. We lose sight of what we ought to be focused on, don't we? So here he's telling them to remember and return. And here in verse 8, he's addressing them as transgressors. They're rebellious here. And he's telling them to remember. And so the appeal is to what? If you're remembering something, that's something has happened in the past, hasn't it? He's appealing to history here. He's appealing to, you saw, Isaiah told you what was going to happen. It's happened, right? Remember the God you serve. The moment you stop doing that, it's trouble. So there in verse, he says there, declaring the end from the beginning, my counsel shall stand. He has a long list of, he's given us a long list of reasons to trust him, to turn to him, and to worship him, and nothing else. He's given us a long list of credentials. I think we'll begin here next week. Thank you all for your attention.